Welcome to the Evergreen RX, your prescription for living well. Here, we're all about self-exploration, intentionality, and working with our mind, body, and soul for healing and growth. I'm your host, Hayden. I'm in my 20s and in search of connection, fulfillment, and ways to make sense of the world. If you're down, join me as I explore tools to bridge the gap between external reality and our deep inner worlds, discovering our own prescriptions for health, wholeness, and expansion. Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen RX in a new location. If you're watching on video, I'm coming at you from in front of my Christmas tree. I've got my red joy pillow, but I thought I'd mix it up for this bonus episode in between seasons. It's been a little bit, but I'm excited to get back into it and talk to you guys about the winter solstice that's coming up. But before we get into that, I thought I'd give you a couple of updates about what's been going on. I've been working a lot on figuring out season 2, coming up with new ideas. So if you have any ideas for what you'd like to see me talk about or some structure that you'd like to see in the podcast, reach out to me. Let me know. I'm open. And I'm really excited about what I'm going to bring. I think more episodes, more guests, hopefully a lot more of the things that you want to hear. So if you want to follow along and stay in the loop, just make sure that you follow this podcast wherever you're listening. And you can also keep up with me on Instagram or on TikTok if you like. They're all at the Evergreen RX, so that's a good place to find me. Other than that, I've just been really feeling this holiday season, burning a lot of like cedar candles, like the one behind me, it's the Trader Joe's cedar candle, and that one is so good. It's so strong, and it's just like the exact scent that you want during the holidays. Been going on walks in Austin. Leaves have actually changed colors like pretty intensely, which doesn't always happen, so it's just felt like fall mixed with Christmas in the holiday season, which is like just actually an amazing combination. So I feel really lucky about that. Yeah, I think so far this kind of descend as we go getting closer into the winter season has already been like really reflective for me. I've been doing a lot of internal work, kind of as always, but I feel like it decreased a little bit during the summer, at least at the end of summer, and it was kind of like, all right, just like living and chilling and, out of the very internal reflective space. But I'm back in that. I'm wanting to spend a little bit more time at home, a little bit more time in quiet. I have not gotten around to playing my chakra bowls in a while, but I have been really wanting to do that because that's just kind of the space I'm in, like letting the vibrations move me and like just getting quiet and listening and journaling. I finished one of my most recent journal, and I had to go to the bookstore and pick up another one literally the next day. I was like, I need to get another one because I feel like I have more to say. I'm just kind of back in that flow. I'd love to hear what kind of energy you're in right now, if you're feeling reflective or if you're feeling like super social and doing a lot of fun little get-togethers. Yeah, I want to hear where everybody's at. So anyway, we're here to talk about the winter solstice, which is tomorrow. If you're listening to this on the day that the podcast comes out, Wednesday the 20th. So the solstice is on a Thursday, the 21st this year. Even if you're listening to this a little bit after the solstice happens, I feel like there's still so much of that energy that's happening all winter long, not just on the solstice day, even though that day can be really potent and impactful. I think that it's kind of just themes for the whole season in general. But I'm really excited to talk about this because I feel like recently, like in the past year or so, I've really started to tune in with the seasons. Seasons and nature for me have become a really big part of my spirituality and on the way that I connect to myself and I connect to the world around me, just kind of as a tool to slow down and notice what's going on, because we're inside a lot, at least I am, with my job. And I feel like a lot of us out there are inside a lot. We're on technology. We have lights that make it seem like the same time of day all day. Like, it's easy to just let the world pass you by. Maybe you're making the same commute every day, or you work from home and you don't get outside too often. It can be very easy to just make things feel really routine, and like the world and the year isn't really changing around us if we don't want it to. You can have a climate controlled house and all that. So I have really been making a conscious effort to connect to the changing seasons and notice how that makes me feel, the things that I want to eat, the things that I want to do, the level of energy that I do have for social gatherings, for exercise, for all of those kinds of practices, seeing how it changes based off the seasons. And looking back to summer, I can definitely see the difference. In the summer, I was so connected to water, swimming a lot. It was so beautiful being out in the sun, laying on the grass, like hanging out with large groups of people, eating salads or cold foods. And compared to now, which it's like going on crisp little walks and drinking lots of tea and making stew. Me and my boyfriend just recently made meatless chili, and it had like sweet potatoes and bulgur instead of ground beef. And it was so good. Like, that's exactly what I wanted to eat when it's like a little bit cold outside and we're just feeling slower, doing a lot of yoga. And yeah, just noticing those changes has been really cool, and it helps me kind of tune in. So that's why I want to talk about the winter solstice with y'all, because I love these seasonal practices. If you're not familiar, it's, the big four are the winter solstice, the summer solstice, which happens in late June, and then the autumn equinox and the spring equinox, which are kind of, they mark the beginning of each new season. Equinoxes are seen as the day of equal, so the spring and the fall equinox fall when we have the same amount of daylight as we do night, and the summer and winter solstices fall when there's it's the longest day, we have the most daylight in the summer, and we have the longest night, which is the least amount of sun. So that's what we're talking about today, the longest night. That's the winter solstice. I want to go over kind of the symbolism of the winter solstice, what it represents, what it can represent for you, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some practices that you can do on or around the 21st to celebrate. And then I'll talk a little bit about just like the overall aesthetic and vibe of the winter solstice, and then how you can connect it to your own inner work and to exploring some themes within yourself. So hopefully I'll be able to pack in some good information for you so that you feel like you can do a little bit of celebration if you want, and just kind of commemorate this changing of the seasons. So for some of you where you live, it might already feel like it's winter. It always seems a little bit surprising that the official start of winter is late into December, but I think that traces back to farming practices, or I don't know, probably even before then. But the winter solstice is considered the first day of winter. Like I said, it's known as the longest night. Some people also refer to it as the return of the sun, because one of the things I think is so cool about the symbolism, specifically with the winter solstice, is that it's the darkest, longest, coldest night, kind of, that's the imagery of it. But it also marks the days getting longer and longer from this point. So since the summer solstice in mid-June, late June, the days have been getting shorter and shorter. And now we're at the time where the days are the shortest that they will be. So every day past this point, the sun is returning and the days are getting longer. So even when we're in those really dark, long, cold days of winter, January, February, where it feels like it's never going to end, you can kind of take solace in the fact that from this point on, the sun is slowly returning and we are getting back to those long, warm summer days. And I think that's just such a cool image to hold in your mind, especially when winter starts to get a little rough and a little bit long in the tooth. So some of the symbols associated with the winter solstice are stillness, going at a slower pace. It is kind of the death part of the cycle. So all the trees are dying, all of the plants are kind of going into hibernation, as well as the animals, which also can impact us as animals. We are feeling a little bit more hibernation. This is kind of juxtaposed with the fact that the holidays are a really busy time of year for a lot of people. But typically we want to sleep more, and we just want to go at a slower pace. You know, spring will bring the rebirth, the renewal of everything, but right now we are shedding. And that's another big theme, is going within, reflecting, and looking at what it is that you want to let go and you want to move through. So I really view this as a time to kind of cap off the year, to reflect back on the year that's been, on 2023, things that you've accomplished, maybe going and revisiting the goals that you set at the beginning of the year and seeing where you're at with all of those, what you've accomplished, what feels like it's no longer important to you, celebrating the things that you've done, and really taking time to look back. Because I personally view the new year, which is like its own holiday in my, well, obviously it's a holiday, but the new year is like its own spiritual holiday in my mind, because it's such a good time to really set intentions, think about the energy you want to bring in, the new vibes and people and experiences that you want to welcome in. I think the new year is so strong for that kind of goal setting, because we all know we can reinvent ourselves at any point. It doesn't just have to be the new year, but there is something so special about that energy when everybody is thinking a little bit more about what they want to bring into their lives. You know, it's just societally, we have more of an expectation for setting goals at that time. So I just think it brings about a stronger energy than if you just decided to like reinvent yourself, you know, on March 14th or something. Which, you know, I'm thinking about maybe doing another bonus episode somewhere in January to talk a little bit more potentially about these themes and intentions and how to really set yourself up for a good year. So if you want to hear more of that, let me know. But yeah, I like to draw that line because I really think the winter solstice can be such a powerful time to just focus on reflecting, composting the old, letting go, releasing, and not yet moving into what it is you want to bring in. Like giving yourself a little bit of time and space to just celebrate and also to release, which, you know, is enough of a process on its own without adding in what else you want to bring in. So in terms of some practices, some ways you can celebrate, last year is the first year that I really celebrated the winter solstice. And what I did was I turned off all the lights as soon as the night started. I lit a lot of candles, like covered my living room in candles. I did a little burning ceremony of writing down the things I wanted to release and burning them over just like a candle. I think I lit them on fire and put them in a bowl. So, I mean, be careful, but maybe have like a sink nearby, but it was it was a controlled burn. And I journaled, played some, you know, chakra frequency music, just like made it a really calming vibe, and made like a stew. You could also make mulled wine if you want. Or you could do a simmer pot, which, you know, is where you can put a bunch of herbs or spices, fruits, into a pot of boiling water. And it usually creates a really nice scent in your house. This is also a good time to pull cards. So if you're into Oracle, tarot cards, pulling some cards, you can create your own little spread. Some simple questions can be, you know, what am I releasing? What am I moving through? How can I best support myself through this process? what's my biggest lesson from this past year or this past seasonal cycle. You can really get creative with the kinds of things that you want to ask. You can even use those questions if you're not into pulling cards, or if you just want to add in an additional practice, you can use those as journaling prompts. It can also be super fun to just embrace the darkness, to stay up late. You can go outside if it's not too cold and look up at the stars or the moon. Just listen to all of the wildlife, even feel a little bit of the cold. If you can have a fire outside, having a fire outside would be really fun. It's also a really awesome time to get together a circle of friends and do some of these practices together, share stories or share reflections with each other. Also, a fun idea is to watch the sunrise to welcome in the light when it comes. If you're a real night owl, you could pull an all-nighter if you wanted, and then watch the sunrise and just acknowledge that component of the winter solstice, which is welcoming in the light. So you can kind of take it whichever direction you want. You know, even with me talking about using the new year as a time to set new goals, depending on where you're at, you could also use the night as the time to release and shed and reflect, and then you could do a sunrise practice and use that as the time to set new intentions, to bring in new energy, and to already kind of kickstart your new year. So that can be kind of a cool way to honor both the longest night and welcoming in the new light. Also, a classic for these kind of seasonal changes and practices is creating a seasonal altar. So whatever makes you think of this time of year, you know, you can embrace different colors, blues and whites. You can bring in, you know, cloves and nutmeg and cinnamon, really warm spices, warming foods or foods that grow at this time, breads, maybe you make sourdough or baked goods, lighting candles on your altar, bringing in pine. If you have a Christmas tree, you can even snip off a little bit of the greenery, holly berries, you know, whatever symbolizes this season for you, bringing in things from your own religious practices, if you have them, of course, your own spiritual practice. I mean, that's kind of the basis of the altar in general. Just whatever represents the season to you is great to have on the altar, and it's really fun to incorporate different sights, smells, sounds, tactile things, velvet, you know, fur, some ideas. Pinterest is also a great way to source ideas for this. You can really get creative and create a Pinterest board with the aesthetic. It kind of brings me to what I see as the aesthetic of the season, which is, you know, what we've been talking about, just cozy vibes, curling up on the couch, sipping tea, sipping hot chocolate, taking baths, being really slow and intentional. Maybe you do your longer skincare routine. You're just cozy and pampered. Just warming foods, warming teas, soups, stews, breads, connecting with nature, like I've been saying, if it still is a decent temperature where you live, to go on a walk or a hike and take some moments to pause and listen to the silence or the stillness. Notice what the birds are doing, what animals are out or maybe not out in the area that you live in, what plants are growing or what plants are dying at this time of year, and just taking that time to really get connected. I think that's like the most beautiful way to celebrate any seasonal shift, is by connecting with the nature aspect. And then finally, really connecting it to your own internal work, or kind of bringing it to more of a inner world psychological side, as we like to do. I think this season is a really great reminder that nothing is constantly blooming. One time my therapist drew this parallel for me, that even when the trees look dead and it looks like nothing is really changing or nothing is happening, a lot is happening under the surface, because we all know that time in spring where all of a sudden it seems like you just blinked and all the trees are green and there's buds and there's flowers and everything is in bloom. And it seems to happen so fast. And in nature, it really does happen fast. And that is a result of the time of stillness and dormancy that the plants and the trees take during the winter. They take a pause, they slow down, gather energy, so that when it is time to bloom again, they are ready for it. And I really see us as no different. So using this as a reminder that maybe if you've gone through a period of feeling stuck, or you're in a time where you're feeling slower, that's perfectly fine. That's normal, that's welcome. And to see how you can treat yourself in that energy and embrace your own human cycles. That's kind of the other theme I thought of, is just using every seasonal change as an example of natural rhythms and an invitation to explore your own natural rhythms. So I've talked about this before on the podcast, but for people who menstruate, we have such a natural cycle that happens every month. But there's daily cycles. The solstice is such a beautiful example of that, with the constant change in the amount of sun and moonlight we get. That is a daily cycle that occurs from sunrise to sunset and beyond. So really looking at what it is your cycle is feeling like right now. For me, I'm feeling really connected and really joyful in the cycle I am in right now. Taking this time to step back from the podcast, take a little bit of a break so that I can have all these creative juices flowing and really think of how I want to reinvent or reorder, not even that dramatic, but what I want to bring to the next step in this podcast. I'm really enjoying this time of just like sitting on ideas and percolating and thinking and dreaming, and it's feeling really good, and it's feeling really aligned with where we're at on the wheel of the year. So thinking about some of that for yourself and just taking it as a reflection on your own rhythms and maybe how you're going with the flow, or how you're maybe fighting the rhythm a little bit, because man, I have fought the rhythm and it's hard and it gets really tiring. And so, using that as another invitation and exploration for your own growth. So I hope you got some fun ideas here. I would love to see if you do something to celebrate the winter solstice. So please tag me or send it to me. I would absolutely love that. The aesthetic and vibe of seasonal changes is so deeply satisfying to me. So I'm always down to hear about it and to see what other people do and to learn more. Because I'm just at the beginning understanding of these practices and how best to incorporate them into my life. So I'm learning with you and alongside you. So yeah, and I hope you enjoyed this little setup. If you are watching, I think it's kind of fun to be in front of an evergreen. I've also got my 3-year-old popcorn garland here that I made on a break from grad school, when really all I wanted and needed to do was to sit and watch TV and thread a popcorn garland endlessly. Talk about tapping into the energy and where I was at rhythmically. That was all I wanted to do, and it was so joyous. And luckily, it's petrified enough that it has lasted me years, because it's quite the dedication to make one. Anyway, that's all I've got for you. I am happy to touch in between seasons, and I'm so excited for what's to come. I think it's going to be really good. So please stay tuned. I'm super, super excited, very energized for where we're going to take this community and how we're going to grow the evergreen circle. So I'd love for you to be a part of it. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. I wish you a beautiful and fulfilling winter solstice. Bye.